Hello students, welcome to class lecture for Module 1, Part 1. This is Module 1, Introduction, Part 1. The objectives for this module are to have introductions. We'll have a meet and greet with an online discussion. You'll see that in the module. This is the class lecture, Introduction to BA 130, Part 1. This is what we're watching now. We will cover formal versus informal language. We will talk about the Latino population and who we are interpreting for. We will discuss the modes of interpreting and the KSAs. We'll talk about discussion 1 and class exercise 1 as well as homework number 1. Be sure to watch the course syllabus video and there will be a quiz in module 2. Be sure to go over the syllabus in class in module 1. Review that. It might look a little bit different in your course, but you'll see a course syllabus class. You should have the accessible course syllabus page, and it might be in Word and PDF as well. So go through that information. You have 3 attempts when you take the quiz, which is in Module 2. Let's talk about language. Language, of course, can be formal or informal. In informal language, we're covering 3 types: colloquial, slang, and regionalism. Please review and have in your toolbox the definitions for each of these 3. So when we talk about colloquial, it means that language that is used in or suited for familiar and informal conversation, colloquial language. When we talk about slang, it's similar to colloquial, but it's very informal words used by a group of people. And a regionalism is a word used in a particular region. And we'll see examples of those in the exercises when we cover those later in the module. From time to time in this class, I'll be bringing in bloopers, which means mistakes that are made in translation more than interpretation. So signs that are mistranslated, etc. We'll cover what bloopers are more in a different section, but in here, the blooper we'll be covering in this module is the London Crime Stopper, the street signs, when they were translated from English to Spanish. So the signs produced by the London Metropolitan Police and Crime Stoppers, an independent charity dedicated to making the streets safer. The English reads, "Pickpockets beware, undercover police working in this area." In July, 3 pickpockets, not pickpocketers, but I guess that's the noun in England. 3 pickpockets received sentences of over 4 years. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. And in a campaign targeting light-fingered foreigners, the same warning appears in Spanish on a placard a few lampposts away, but the result, when you turn it back into English, reads approximately, "The pickpockets are kept, police of the inner deck that works in the area. In July, 3 pickpockets received prayers of the prison over 4 years." Cuando vemos aquí el español, los pickpockets se guardan. Beware was mistranslated as se guardan. I don't know how that would happen, but that's the way it was done. Apparently there was no professional translator there. So undercover police. Policía de la cubierta interior. So I guess if you're talking about the cover, under the cover of a boat, because la cubierta is part of the boat right there. So undercover. Policía de la cubierta interior, que trabaja en el área. So that's probably not even Google Translate, so I don't know where that came from. In July, 3 pickpockets. In Julio, 3 los pickpockets. So sometimes when Google, especially in the early days, I don't know what year this was done, but in the early days of Google Translate, when Google couldn't come up with a translation, it was in the beginning stages, it just left words in English. So it just left pickpockets in English. Recibieron oraciones. So when you talk about sentences, this means prison sentences, but also a sentence with a noun and a verb, etc. es una oración. So it could be una oración, but oración also means prayer. So that it creates a triple dissociation of the translation. Recibieron oraciones de la prisión, prison sentences, sobre de 4 años. Alright, so just look out for bloopers. They're funny sometimes, but later on, when we get to the medical translation and interpretation, we'll see that bloopers can be devastating. They can be very difficult to deal with. In the meantime, if you find bloopers, present them to class, post them in either the general course questions or in some of the discussion groups as we come to them. Alright, let's continue. Here we see information from 2015. The Census Bureau projected that in 2060, Hispanic people will comprise 28.6% of the total population, with 119 million Hispanic individuals residing in the United States. There are an estimated 58.9 million Hispanic people in the United States, comprising 18.1% of the population. The most Hispanic populous states are Arizona, California, Colorado, Georgia, Florida, Illinois, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, and Texas. An estimated 41 million U.S. residents, or 13.4% of the population, speak Spanish at home. And an estimated 22.5 million Spanish speakers also speak English very well, according to the 2017 Census Survey. And an additional 6.8 million reported they speak English well. So a lot of bilingual people. There's a CNN.com article right there for your perusal. Go ahead and review that for more data and more information. So here is briefly the Latinos from the various countries of origin. You can review this right there. So let's talk about modes of interpretation. Professionally, we understand three modes of interpretation: sight translation, consecutive, and simultaneous. When we think of interpretation, consecutive and simultaneous are the two major differences, and we'll talk about sight translation in just a moment. So let's start from the bottom. Simultaneous interpretation is when you listen to the source language and interpret into the target language almost at the same time, a few seconds apart. And we'll practice how to do that, how to get better at simultaneous interpretation, because it requires a different skill of listening and speaking at the same time, which is not natural. Consecutive interpretation: the interpreter listens to the source language, then interprets that part of the speech into the target language. So just as more definitions, source language is the language you are listening to interpret from, and target language is the language that you interpret into. So let's say that you are a medical interpreter, you are interpreting for a patient at a medical appointment. When the doctor speaks, in English of course, the source language is English. The target language is Spanish. So you're listening in English to the doctor, you're interpreting to the patient in Spanish. Source language is English, target language is Spanish. But not always. When the patient talks to the doctor, speaks to the doctor, answers questions, etc., the source language is Spanish, and the target language is English, because you're going from Spanish to English. So source language and target language are not fixed. It just depends which language pair you're working from and into. And that's consecutive. This is mostly used in interviews like this, medical appointments, etc. Sight translation is an oral interpretation of a written document, either medical documents, forms, applications, etc. So the document is written in English. Let's say that you are helping again someone in a clinic. They are asked to fill out a form, but they don't read English. They don't speak English. They don't read English. So you are sight translating the English form, but you don't write the whole form. You don't translate the form. It's called translation because there is a written form, but it's part of interpretation because you are saying it orally. So you read name, for example, and then you will tell the patient nombre, which means, of course, escriba su nombre en este espacio. The form might ask age, and then you will say orally edad, or you can explain what the question asks. So that's sight translation, oral interpretation of a written document. So these are the three modes of interpretation. Commit them to memory. This is part of what we'll be covering from now on. We'll talk about simultaneous, consecutive, be sure to know the difference, and sight translation. Let's talk about KSAs, which stands for knowledge, skills, and abilities. As translators, as interpreters, we need to develop our knowledge, our skills, and our abilities. And the Judicial Council of California has a form, which is in one of the modules. This is part of your assigned readings to discuss the knowledge, skills, and abilities essential for court interpretation. That's why it's from the Judicial Council of California. So look at the link that is in the module. It might be different from this as websites are updated from time to time, but the module will have the most recent one. And then you have several assignments for the KSAs that are recommended by the Judicial Council of California. So as far as your linguistic skills, you need to have native-like proficiency in all working languages. The working languages are the languages into which and from which you work. So let's say that you speak English, Spanish, French, and Italian. You speak 4 languages, but those are your speaking languages. Your working languages, let's say that you are certified for court interpretation, English and Spanish. So your working languages are English and Spanish, even though you also speak French and Italian. So that's the difference between spoken languages or speaking languages and working languages. You need to be able to think and react communicatively in all working languages. You need to have a knowledge and use of a broad range of vocabulary, including legal terminology, subject-specific terminology, and slang. That's why we need to cover and understand slang in both our languages, or all our working languages. And to have knowledge and use of cultural nuances, regional variations, that's why we cover regionalisms, idiomatic expressions, and colloquialisms in all working languages. That's why it's important for you to develop, if you don't have that already, your flexibility in knowing the different idiomatic expressions in both languages. In our case, English and Spanish, but in all your working languages, because that is required when you are interpreting for someone and they use an idiomatic expression in, let's say, Spanish. You're supposed to interpret that into the closest equivalent in English, if possible, also in an idiomatic expression. So if someone says in Spanish, es que me costó un ojo de la cara, you wouldn't say in English, oh, it cost me an eye from the face. You would translate, oh, this cost me an arm and a leg, which is the idiomatic expression in English, and vice versa when going from English to Spanish. So it's important for you to be very familiar and have readily available cultural nuances, some regional variations, idiomatic expressions, and colloquialisms. That's why it's important for us to develop those as we develop our skills. Our speaking skills have the ability to speak with proper pronunciation, diction, and intonation in all working languages. If people have a slight accent, that's fine as long as it does not interfere with understanding. Let's say that somebody came from their home country, Spanish-speaking country, and they are lawyers perhaps. Maybe they're a lawyer in their home country. But they come here and they take the tests and they learn some English, but they have a very heavy accent that the court recorder, the person typing in what's being said, if the court recorder cannot understand the interpreter, it's going to be very difficult for them to be working in a court setting. So speak with proper pronunciation, diction, and intonation. Ability to speak with a neutralized accent in all working languages, and ability to project and or speak softly. We'll talk about that later, why you need to speak softly. And then listening comprehension, ability to listen to and comprehend different rates of speech in all working languages, ability to listen to and comprehend various regional accents and or dialectical differences in all working languages. As you may know from your experience, people from Mexico speak differently in words and in regionalisms, etc., from people in Argentina, for example, from Colombia, from Honduras, El Salvador, etc. So you need to be able to recognize and be able to interpret from, listen to and comprehend different accents, their variations, the regionalisms, and even some dialectical differences. And the ability to ignore auditory distractions and focus on source speaker, because you will have different things going on in a courtroom. You need to be able to focus on what the lawyers are saying, the witness is saying, etc. So these are some of the knowledge, skills, and abilities. Read the document for the rest of them because that's part of your assigned reading. And in the discussion, this is introduction, your career goals. I believe it's a little bit different, the introduction that we have. So look for discussion number 1. It might be slightly different than that. So look for the current discussion number 1. Check the due dates. Normally in all discussions, it's in the instructions, you will post your response to the question, to the discussion, on Friday, and by Sunday you're going to reply to 2 of your classmates. And please write more than 3 sentences to obtain the points. For your responses, don't just say something like, oh, that's very nice. Empathize with it, acknowledge it, say how you disagree with it, or how your story is different, your experience is similar, etc. So more than 3 sentences to obtain the points. That's in all discussions. You'll have a Friday due date to post and a Sunday due date for your 2 replies to your classmates' posts. That's discussion number 1. Remember that this one is required for you to stay in the class. There is a rubric. It's going to be different than this one. To obtain your full points, you must reply to the post by Friday, your 2 replies to 2 of your classmates by Sunday. There's no late submission, so plan your week accordingly. If you can, post this as early as possible in the week. Don't wait until Friday. That way you give your classmates more opportunities to respond to your post if you post before Friday. You can post on Monday when the module opens. You can post on Tuesday or Wednesday, but you have until Friday, but do not wait until Friday. Because if everyone waits till Friday, then everyone else, including yourself, is working on the weekend to reply to 2 of the posts. So the earlier the better, as in most things in life. Homework number 1, there will be an assignment there. It might be different by the time you get your assignment when your class opens for your semester. So check out homework number 1. The instructions are there. The deadline is there. And then a class exercise number 1. The instructions are there, clearly written. There are some videos in the module. Be sure to watch those videos from Larousse, which are examples of colloquial words from Mexico, or Mexicanismos. And there's an optional part of the assignment where if you're working from home, if you have siblings, parents, children that live at home, you can have them help you in this exercise if you want. Check out the deadlines. The deadlines are there for a reason. Every module, every assignment has a deadline, so check that. Most of the assignments are due on Sunday of that week. And again, for the discussions, before Friday is your first post, and before Sunday your replies to 2 students. But I say again, don't wait until the end. Alright, this is it for class lecture part 1.